To my granddaughter Rachel, I leave $1. Laughter erupted around the table, sharp and cruel. Rachel's cheeks burned as the attorney continued reading, listing millions in assets now belonging to her cousins. With trembling fingers, she accepted the single coin from the lawyer, a commemorative dollar with her grandfather's initials engraved on the edge. "That's it?" she whispered. The attorney, Graham Pierce, met her eyes with an inscrutable expression. "For now," he murmured. Rachel Bennett had always been the family disappointment, college dropout, divorced waitress, and now the recipient of a $1 inheritance while her relatives divided millions. But neither Rachel nor her smug family could possibly imagine how that single dollar would transform her life and the custody battle for her children within just 48 hours. The diner's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Rachel's face as she refilled coffee cups with mechanical precision. 3 days had passed since the humiliating will reading, but the memories still stung fresh. The dollar coin sat in her apron pocket, a persistent reminder of her grandfather's final dismissal. "Order up, Rachel." The short order cook's voice jolted her back to the present. She balanced 3 plates along her arm with practiced ease, navigating between crowded tables. The breakfast rush at Magnolia Diner meant tips, and tips meant a fighting chance at her upcoming custody hearing. "Need a refill, hon?" she asked, an elderly couple in booth 6. The man nodded kindly, "Working hard today." "Every day," Rachel replied. The words caught in her throat. Soren and Elowen were spending the weekend with their father, Drew. The court-mandated visitation schedule gave her only 2 weekends a month with them, a painful arrangement that might soon become even more restrictive. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Graham Pierce, her grandfather's attorney. Rachel frowned. What could he possibly want? She'd already received her inheritance, all $1 of it. "I need to take this," she told her manager. In the alley behind the diner, Rachel answered the call. "Mr. Pierce, if this is about signing more paperwork, I can stop by your office after my shift ends at—" "Miss Bennett," he interrupted, "your inheritance is incomplete." "What do you mean?" "I got my dollar." Everyone had a good laugh. "That coin is more than it appears. I need to show you something tomorrow. I'm busy tomorrow. I have a custody hearing." "What time?" 9 a.m. "I'll pick you up at noon then." "This can't wait another day." Before she could protest, he hung up. Rachel stared at her phone, bewildered. Another dollar? A $10 bill this time? Whatever game her grandfather was playing from beyond the grave, she didn't have time for it, not with her children's future hanging in the balance. The courthouse loomed before her the next morning, its stone columns and broad steps projecting an authority that made Rachel's stomach tighten. Inside, the polished wooden benches of courtroom 3 were hard and unforgiving beneath her. She'd worn her best outfit, a navy blue dress from a consignment shop, and the only pair of heels she hadn't sold to cover last winter's heating bill. Across the aisle, Drew Bennett sat confidently in his tailored suit, his attorney leaning over to whisper something that made him nod. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Harriet Klein entered the courtroom. Rachel stood, smoothing her dress nervously, the dollar coin pressed against her thigh from inside her pocket. She'd brought it as a reminder that even family could write you off, that she needed to fight her own battles. "Be seated," Judge Klein said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the file before her. "This is a continuation of custody proceedings for Soren and Elowen Bennett, minors aged 13 and 8. I've reviewed the reports from the court-appointed evaluator and the financial disclosures from both parties." Rachel's attorney, a public defender named Marcia Delgado, squeezed her hand reassuringly. But Rachel had seen the evaluator's report. It emphasized stability, financial security, and a consistent environment, all areas where Drew's 6-figure income gave him a devastating advantage over her minimum wage position. Judge Klein looked up. "Mr. Bennett provides health insurance, private school tuition, and has maintained the family home, providing consistency for the children during this transition. Ms. Bennett, while clearly devoted to her children, works variable shifts and resides in a one-bedroom apartment where the children must share the bedroom while she sleeps on a sofa bed. Rachel's throat constricted, each word hammered home her inadequacy in the court's eyes. "Your Honor," Marcia interjected, "my client has applied for assistant manager positions at 3 establishments and is enrolled in night classes to complete her associate's degree. Her dedication to improving her situation while maintaining close bonds with her children should be considered." Drew's attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, stood intent. "Doesn't provide stability, Your Honor. The children's academic records show improved performance during periods when they're primarily in my client's care. Mr. Bennett has created a home office to allow him more flexibility around the children's schedules, and his mother lives nearby to assist when needed." After careful consideration, Judge Klein announced, "I am granting primary physical custody to Mr. Bennett, with Ms. Bennett to have visitation every other weekend and 1 evening dinner visit per week." The words hit Rachel like physical blows. Primary custody to Drew. She would see her children only 6 days a month. "Your Honor," she began, rising shakily to her feet. "Please, Ms. Bennett," the judge cut her off firmly but not unkindly. "This arrangement can be revisited in 6 months if your circumstances change substantially. I encourage you to continue your education and secure more stable employment." The gavel came down with finality. Rachel stood frozen as Drew and his attorney gathered their papers, their satisfied expressions barely concealed. As they passed, Drew paused. "I'll have Soren and Elowen call you tonight," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Maybe this will motivate you to get your life together." After they left, Rachel remained seated, numb, as Marcia reviewed their options. "We can appeal, but without changed circumstances, it's unlikely to succeed," the lawyer explained gently. "Focus on creating stability. Document everything. Be punctual for every visitation." Rachel nodded mechanically, clutching her purse. Inside, her fingers found the dollar coin. Worthless, just like her promises to her children that they would always be together. Outside the courthouse, rain had begun to fall. Rachel checked her watch. 11 a.m. Graham Pierce would arrive any minute. She considered canceling, retreating to her apartment to lick her wounds in private. What could possibly matter now? A sleek black Audi pulled to the curb, and Graham Pierce emerged with an umbrella. In his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he had the measured movements of someone accustomed to handling delicate matters. "Mrs. Bennett?" he said, extending the umbrella to cover her. "I heard about the ruling. I'm truly sorry." Rachel looked up in surprise. "How did you know already?" "I have friends in the courthouse," he replied. "All the more reason why what I'm about to show you matters tremendously. I just lost primary custody of my children. Whatever game my grandfather was playing with this inheritance, I don't have the energy for it today." "This isn't a game, Miss Bennett. Your grandfather Elias was many things, but cruel wasn't one of them. Please give me 2 hours. What I'm about to show you could change everything, especially for Soren and Elowen." They drove in silence for nearly an hour, leaving the city behind. Rachel watched as urban sprawl gave way to suburbs, then to rolling countryside. The rain had stopped, leaving everything washed clean and glistening. "Where exactly are we going?" she finally asked. "Hawthorne County," he replied. "Your grandfather owns significant acreage here." Rachel frowned. "I thought Victor got all the property." "He received the commercial holdings and the family estate," Graham corrected. "This property was held separately, in a trust with very specific terms." The car climbed higher into the hills before cresting a ridge. Graham pulled over at a scenic overlook and turned off the engine. "Before we go further," he said, turning to face her, "I need to see the coin." Rachel hesitated, then withdrew the dollar from her pocket. Holding it up, Graham nodded. "May I?" She handed it over, watching as he examined it closely, turning it to catch the light on the engraved initials. "Elias Bennett was a visionary," Graham said, and much more sentimental than people realized. Did you know he kept every letter you wrote him when you were a child? He did? In a lockbox in his study. He was particularly fond of the one where you designed a perfect town for your school project. You were 10, I believe. I remember that, Rachel said softly. He helped me research it. We spent an entire Saturday at the library looking up sustainable architecture. He never forgot that day, or your design. He gestured toward the windshield. Look down there. Rachel leaned forward, gazing into the valley below. At first, she saw only forest and a glinting ribbon of river. Then she noticed small structures scattered throughout the trees, connected by winding paths. Solar panels glinted on rooftops. A larger building stood near what appeared to be a small dam on the river. "What is that?" she asked. "That is Hawthorne Haven. Your inheritance." He started the car again, continuing down the winding road that descended into the valley. Rachel's mind raced. This couldn't be real. If her grandfather had left her property, why the charade with the dollar? Why the secrecy? As they approached the valley floor, a gate came into view. Simple but elegant wrought iron, with Hawthorne Haven arched across the top. Graham stopped, rolled down his window, and pressed the coin into a circular indentation beside a keypad. The gate swung open silently. "The coin is the key," Graham explained. "Quite literally. I don't understand." "You will." The road opened onto a circular clearing with a fountain at its center. Around the perimeter stood what appeared to be a community center and several smaller buildings. People were visible, working in garden plots, walking along paths, carrying supplies between buildings. As Graham parked, Rachel noticed something strange. The people had stopped what they were doing and were gathering, looking toward the car, not with suspicion, but with what appeared to be anticipation. "Do they know we're coming?" she asked. Graham nodded. "They've been waiting for you for quite some time." Rachel stepped out uncertainly. A woman in her early 60s approached, her silver hair pulled back in a practical braid, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile. "Rachel Bennett," she said. "I'm Miriam Clay. We've been waiting to meet you." Rachel shook her hand. "I'm sorry. I don't understand what's happening here. My grandfather left me $1, not whatever this is. The dollar was the key. The trust couldn't be executed until you physically came here with it." Elias was very specific about that. A small crowd had gathered now, perhaps 30 people of various ages. They regarded Rachel with open curiosity and what seemed like genuine warmth. A man in his 30s using forearm crutches made his way forward. Despite his obvious mobility challenges, he moved with purpose and confidence. "Jonah Reyes," he introduced himself. "Army Corps of Engineers, retired. I maintain the micro-hydroelectric dam and power grid here. Welcome to your inheritance." "I still don't understand. What is this place?" Graham retrieved a sealed envelope from his briefcase. "Perhaps this will help. Your grandfather left this for you, to be opened only when you arrived here." With trembling fingers, Rachel broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was familiar. The same script that had signed birthday cards and the occasional letter during her childhood. "My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, then Graham has fulfilled his promise to bring you to Hawthorne Haven. The dollar coin that seemed so insignificant is actually the key to my true legacy, and now yours. Years ago, you showed me your vision for a perfect community, sustainable, cooperative, and in harmony with nature. While others dismissed it as a child's fantasy, I saw the wisdom in it. Over the last 15 years, I've been quietly building that vision into reality. Hawthorne Haven is home to 60 micro-homes, a community center, workshops, gardens, and a hydroelectric dam that provides clean power. More importantly, it's home to a community of extraordinary people who share your vision, though they don't yet know it was originally yours. I've left the bulk of my fortune to Victor and the others because they value only money. But to you, my true heir in spirit, I leave something far more precious, a living legacy and the means to expand it. The Hawthorne Haven Trust owns this land and provides for its basic operations. As trustee, you will have both the responsibility and the resources to guide its future. Graham will explain the legal details. Why the secrecy? I've learned that true character reveals itself when people believe there is nothing to be gained. Your cousins would have pretended to share my vision if they knew what awaited. You alone have the heart to steward this community as it deserves. My legacy awaits my true heir. That has always been you, Rachel. With love and faith, Grandfather Elias. Rachel lowered the letter, tears blurring her vision. Around her, the community waited expectantly. These strangers who somehow already believed in her. There's more to show you, Miriam said gently. Unable to speak, Rachel nodded. As she followed Miriam and Jonah along a path into the heart of Hawthorne Haven, the dollar coin weighed heavy in her pocket. No longer a symbol of rejection, but the key to a future she could never have imagined. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a small flame of hope kindled. Perhaps, with this inheritance, she could finally provide the stability that the court demanded and bring Soren and Elowen home where they belonged. The tour of Hawthorne Haven unfolded like a dream. Rachel followed Miriam and Jonah through the community, struggling to process the scope of what she was seeing. 60 micro-homes nestled among the trees, each around 400 square feet, beautifully crafted with sustainable materials. Solar panels supplemented the hydroelectric power from the dam. Community gardens flourished in the late spring sunshine. Each resident contributes according to their skills, Miriam explained as they walked. I was a war zone medic for 20 years, so I oversee our medical needs. Others teach, farm, build, or maintain our systems. How long have you been here? Rachel asked. 8 years, Miriam replied. I was one of the first. Elias found me when I was struggling with PTSD after my last deployment. This place healed me. Jonah nodded in agreement. Similar story for many of us. They approached the community center, a 2-story building with wide windows and a broad porch. Inside, Rachel found a large common room with a kitchen, dining area, and comfortable seating. Bookshelves lined one wall, and a bulletin board displayed community announcements and duty rosters. We gather here for meals 3 times a week, Miriam said. Otherwise, each home has its own kitchenette. The second floor has classrooms, a small medical station, and our communications center. Communications? Rachel asked. Satellite internet, emergency radio systems, and a small server farm for our internal network, Jonah explained. A young woman with close-cropped hair and a camera slung over her shoulder approached. You must be Rachel. I'm Zuri Okafor, environmental journalist. I've been documenting the wildlife restoration in the valley for a magazine feature. Rachel shook her hand. So, you don't live here? Just visiting for a few months. I'm camping near the eastern boundary, studying the ecosystem. Your grandfather gave me permission before he passed. Everyone, give Rachel some space, Miriam gently intervened, noting Rachel's overwhelmed expression. She's had quite a day already. Graham stepped forward. Perhaps we should show Rachel the dam control station. That's where the coin's second function comes into play. They left the community center and followed a path to the river where a small dam created a reservoir upstream. The control station was a modest building of concrete and steel, humming with the sound of turbines. This is where it gets interesting, he said. The control system requires 2 forms of authentication, a physical key and a digital code. He indicated a small coin-shaped slot beside the panel. Your dollar is the physical key. Rachel withdrew the coin, examining it with new understanding. And the code? That's the brilliant part. Only Elias knew it, and he never shared it with anyone. Not even me. He said his heir would know. How would I possibly know a code he never told me? He insisted you would, he said. It was something only the 2 of you shared. Rachel hesitated, then carefully inserted the coin into the slot. The panel illuminated, revealing a keypad and a prompt, "Enter passcode." She stared at it, mind racing. What code could her grandfather have expected her to know? Birthdays? Anniversaries? Special occasions? "What happens if I get it wrong?" she asked. "3 failed attempts will lock the system for 24 hours, Jonah explained. "But don't worry. The dam operates on redundant systems. This is just for administrative access." Rachel closed her eyes, thinking about her grandfather. What number would he have chosen that only she would know? Then it came to her, the day they'd spent researching sustainable communities. She'd been exactly 10 years and 43 days old. Her grandfather had teased her about being a decade and change. Slowly, she entered her birth date, October 17, 1983. The screen flashed green. "Access granted. Welcome, trustee." Jonah whistled low. He was right. You did know. The screen changed to display a system overview. Power generation stats, water levels, security systems in the corner. A notification blinked. "New trustee recognized. Secure files unlocked." "What files?" Rachel asked. "These would be the trust documents," Graham explained, scanning the list. "Everything you need to understand your role as trustee." "This is overwhelming." "Let's get you settled," Miriam suggested. "There's a trustee residence near the community center. You look like you could use some rest and time to process." The trustee residence turned out to be a cabin slightly larger than the micro-homes, with a bedroom, office, kitchen, and comfortable living area. Large windows overlook the community and the valley beyond. "Your grandfather stayed here when he visited," Miriam explained. "The fridge is stocked, and there are fresh linens on the bed." Left alone, Rachel wandered through the cabin, trailing her fingers over furniture her grandfather had used. On the desk in the office, she found framed photographs, one of herself as a child sitting on Elias's lap, another of the valley before development began. She sank into the desk chair, emotionally exhausted. The custody hearing felt like it had happened days ago instead of hours. She checked her phone. No service. "Of course, the satellite phone is in the top drawer," Graham said. "For emergencies. Regular cell service is available at the communications building if you need to make calls." "I need to check on my kids." "Of course," Graham replied. "I'll have someone show you to the communications center when you're ready." He paused. "Rachel, there's something else you should know. The trust includes a significant stipend for the trustee. It's meant to ensure you can focus on managing the community without financial strain." "How significant?" Rachel asked. $15,000 monthly, Graham said, "plus healthcare coverage and educational funds for your children." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. 15,000 a month? Elias was very clear about this. The trustee's well-being was paramount to the community's success. After he left, Rachel sat in stunned silence. With that stipend, she could provide everything the court deemed necessary for her children: stable housing, education, health care. She could petition for a custody review, immediately based on changed circumstances. Using the satellite phone, she called Drew. He answered on the third ring. "Rachel, where are you? Your phone's been going straight to voicemail." "I'm at a property my grandfather left me," she explained. "There's no regular cell service here. I wanted to check on the kids." A pause. "They're fine. Eloan had a bit of a meltdown after dinner, but she's settled now. Can I talk to them?" "They're doing homework," Drew said. "Listen, about the hearing." "I'll be petitioning for a review," Rachel interrupted. "My financial situation has changed significantly. I can provide everything the court requires now. Because of a $1 inheritance?" Meyer mentioned that theatrical stunt at the will reading. "There was more to it," Rachel said. "I have to go, but please tell Soren and Eloan I love them and I'll see them this weekend." She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking. Drew had always been dismissive of her capabilities, even during their marriage. Now she had the means to prove him wrong. The next morning, Rachel woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to close. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Hawthorne Haven. The inheritance. The trust. After a quick shower, she found Miriam waiting on the porch, with coffee and fresh-baked bread. "Hope you don't mind," Miriam said. "Thought you could use breakfast before the morning meeting." Morning meeting? Community Council meets daily at 8 to discuss work assignments and any issues that need addressing. As trustee, you're automatically the chair, though most of us have been managing things cooperatively since Elias fell ill. I don't know the first thing about running a community like this. None of us did at first. You'll learn. Besides, you're not alone. The meeting took place in the community center, with about 20 residents representing various aspects of Haven operations. Rachel listened more than she spoke, absorbing the rhythms and relationships of the community. They discussed garden rotations, a leak in one of the micro-homes, and plans for the summer farmers market in the nearby town. "We sell our excess produce and crafts," explained an older man named Hector. "The income goes back into the community fund for supplies we can't produce ourselves." After the meeting, Jonah offered to show Rachel more of the property's infrastructure. They took an electric utility vehicle to the eastern boundary where the land sloped up toward the neighboring ridge. "The property covers about 2,000 acres, Jonah explained. "Most of it is forest preservation, but we use about 100 acres for the community, gardens, and orchards." 2,000 acres? That's enormous. Prime real estate too, Jonah added. The neighboring property was bought by Pterodyne Minerals last year. They've been sniffing around our boundaries ever since. Pterodyne? That's my cousin Victor's company. We had several accidental incursions by their survey teams. Your grandfather was fighting them off when he got sick. As if summoned by the mention, Rachel's phone rang. She'd picked up a signal at the communications center earlier. It was a number she didn't recognize. Rachel Bennett speaking. "Rachel, it's Victor. We need to talk." Rachel tensed. "About what?" "About that property you're standing on. I'd like to make you an offer. I'm not interested in selling. You haven't heard my offer yet. $5 million cash. For a waitress with custody problems, that's life-changing money. How do you know about my custody situation?" "Small world," Victor replied smoothly. "Drew and I have mutual acquaintances. He mentioned your financial difficulties. $5 million would solve those problems overnight. The property isn't for sale, Victor, at any price. Don't be hasty," he pressed. "That land has significant lithium deposits. Pterodyne needs it for our clean energy battery production. You'd be helping the environment and securing your children's future." "I'll secure their future my way," Rachel replied firmly. She hung up, her heart racing. Jonah studied her with concern. "Everything okay? My cousin just offered me $5 million for this land. That's pocket change compared to what the lithium deposits are worth," Jonah said grimly. "Probably north of 50 million, and that's just what they've identified so far." Rachel's eyes widened. 50 million? Why do you think your grandfather protected this land so carefully? It wasn't just about the community, it was about keeping these resources out of corporate hands. He gestured to the valley around them. "This ecosystem is rare and fragile. Mining would destroy it and contaminate the watershed for decades." They returned to the community center where Graham was waiting with a stack of documents. "I've prepared the paperwork to notify the court of your changed circumstances," he explained. "With the trustee's stipend and the housing provided here, you have a strong case for custody reconsideration." Rachel signed where indicated. "How soon can we file?" "Today," Graham promised. "There's something else," Rachel said, explaining Victor's call. "He mentioned lithium deposits. He's also apparently in contact with my ex-husband. Victor's ruthless in business. If he wants this land, he won't stop at one phone call. He offered $5 million. This land cannot be sold without unanimous consent from all residents, plus the trustee. It's deliberately structured to prevent exactly this scenario. Good, because I have no intention of selling my grandfather's legacy or my own." That weekend brought Rachel's first scheduled visitation with her children since the custody ruling. Drew would bring them to Hawthorne Haven for the day, a prospect that filled Rachel with both excitement and anxiety. How would they react to this place, to the dramatic change in her circumstances? She spent Friday preparing the trustee cabin, making up the sofa bed for Soren and arranging Elowen's favorite stuffed animals on the daybed in the office. Rachel paced the gravel parking area, watching for Drew's silver SUV. She baked cookies, something she rarely had time for in her apartment, and asked Hector for the freshest strawberries from the garden. Saturday morning dawned clear and warm. When it finally appeared, her heart leapt to her throat. The vehicle had barely stopped when the passenger door flew open and Elowen tumbled out, her dark curls bouncing. At 8, she was all energy and curiosity, though her greeting was more subdued than usual, a quick hug before stepping back to eye the surroundings warily. Soren emerged more slowly, 13 and increasingly conscious of his dignity. His resemblance to Drew was striking, the same straight nose and serious eyes, but he had Rachel's copper-red hair. He offered a stilted "Hey, Mom." Drew stepped out last, his expression a carefully constructed mask of neutrality that didn't quite hide his curiosity. "This is unexpected," he said. "Your grandfather left you this place?" "It's called Hawthorne Haven," Rachel explained. "Grandfather Elias built it as a sustainable community. I'm the trustee now." Drew raised an eyebrow. "Trustee? That sounds like responsibility without ownership." "It comes with a substantial stipend," Rachel replied. "I've already filed for a custody review based on my changed circumstances. I'll pick them up at 7. After he drove away, Rachel turned to her children with forced brightness. "Want the grand tour? There's a treehouse library you might like, Elowen. And Soren, wait until you see the solar array and dam system." Elowen perked up slightly at the mention of a treehouse, but Soren shrugged non-committally. "Dad says this is just some hippie commune? Are there even flush toilets?" "Yes, there are flush toilets, and high-speed internet, hot showers, and everything else you're used to, just in a more sustainable package." The tour proceeded with Elowen gradually showing more enthusiasm while Soren maintained a studied indifference. They met several community members, including 2 families with children who invited Soren and Elowen to join a game of Capture the Flag later. "Can I play, Mom?" Elowen asked. "Of course," Rachel said. "Soren, what about you?" "Maybe. Can I see this dam you mentioned?" Rachel led them to the control station where Jonah was running a system check. He greeted the children warmly, taking special care to engage Soren. "Your mom tells me you're into engineering," Jonah said. "This system generates enough power for the whole community plus some we sell back to the grid." Soren leaned forward with interest. "How does it regulate during heavy rainfall?" Jonah launched into an explanation that quickly grew technical. Rachel watched in amazement as her son's reluctance melted away in the face of genuine intellectual engagement. "You should see our drone system sometime," Jonah added. Soren's eyes lit up. "You have drones? I built one for my science club last semester." "No kidding? You'll have to tell me about it." By evening, the visit had evolved beyond Rachel's cautious hopes. Elowen had joined the Capture the Flag game and made fast friends with a 9-year-old girl named Maya. Soren had spent 2 hours with Jonah discussing engineering concepts and had even agreed to return to the dam the following weekend to help with drone monitoring. As they ate dinner on the cabin's porch, watching fireflies begin to rise from the meadow, Elowen asked the question Rachel had been waiting for. "Are we going to live here with you, Mom?" "I'm working on it, sweetie. I've asked the judge to look at our case again." Soren frowned. "But what about school, my friends?" "The robotics competition is next month." "We'd figure all that out," Rachel assured him. "There's a learning center here, but you could still attend your current school if that's what you want. It's about a 40-minute drive." "Dad says this place will probably get shut down," Soren said. "He says it's built on valuable mining land and that your cousin's company will take it over eventually." "Your father doesn't have all the information," she said carefully. "This land is protected by a very solid legal trust. It's not going anywhere." The sound of tires on gravel announced Drew's early return. Rachel walked the children to the parking area, her heart heavy with the impending separation. "I love you both so much," she said, hugging them tightly. "I'll see you next weekend, and we'll finish exploring." Elowen hugged back fiercely. "I want to come back," Maya said. "I could help in the butterfly garden." Soren was more reserved but managed a small smile. "The drone thing sounds cool." After they climbed into the SUV, Drew approached Rachel. "Quite the fantasy world you've found yourself in," he said. "Just don't get too comfortable. Victor Hawthorne isn't known for taking no for an answer, and he's convinced this land is rightfully his. Is that why you've been talking to him about me, planning how to undermine my custody petition?" "I'm being practical, Rachel. A settlement with Teradyne would secure our children's future better than this experiment in communal living." "You mean it would secure your future?" Rachel retorted. "What did he promise you? A finder's fee? Consulting contract? Or just the satisfaction of watching me fail again?" "You always were naive," Drew sighed, turning away. "Some things never change." As the SUV disappeared down the access road, Rachel stood alone in the gathering dusk, a familiar sense of powerlessness threatening to overwhelm her. But something had changed. She was no longer the woman who had stood broken outside that courtroom. She had resources now, and responsibility not just to her children, but to this entire community. For 2 weeks, life at Hawthorne Haven fell into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural to Rachel. Mornings began with community council meetings, followed by work with Graham on legal matters and learning the operational details of the trust. Afternoons often found her helping in the gardens or spending time with residents, absorbing their stories and skills. The custody petition had been filed, with a preliminary hearing scheduled for the following month. Rachel spoke with Soren and Elowen nightly via the satellite connection at the communications center, their conversations growing warmer as the children's excitement about Hawthorne Haven overcame the initial resistance Drew had fostered. Tonight, Rachel sat at the desk in the trustee cabin, reviewing the trust's financial statements with growing astonishment. Beyond the physical property and the trustee's stipend, the trust held substantial investments, enough to ensure Hawthorne Haven's operations for decades. Her grandfather had created something truly sustainable, in every sense of the word. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Zuri stood on the porch, camera in hand, expression troubled. "Sorry to bother you so late," she said, "but I found something concerning during my boundaries survey today." She connected her camera to Rachel's laptop, pulling up images of men in Teradyne uniform examining the dam's spillway structure. The photos were clearly taken with a telephoto lens from a hidden position. "They were measuring and taking water samples," Zuri explained. Rachel studied the images. "When was this?" "This afternoon, around 3. I was photographing kingfishers when I spotted them." "Did they see you?" "I'm pretty good at staying hidden when I need to. Comes with the territory as a wildlife photographer." Rachel immediately called Jonah, who arrived within minutes, his face grim as he viewed the photos. "This isn't good," he said. "That's the emergency release system. They have no legitimate reason to be documenting that." "Could they sabotage it?" Rachel asked. Jonah's silence was answer enough. "We need to increase security," Rachel decided. "Zuri, would you be willing to set up some trail cameras along that boundary?" "Jonah, can we program the drones for night surveillance?" Both agreed readily. By midnight, they had implemented a makeshift security system. Trail cameras at strategic points, drones programmed for automated patrol flights, and a volunteer rotation for physical checks every 4 hours. "I'll take the first watch," Jonah offered. "Get some sleep, Rachel. We've done what we can for tonight." But sleep proved elusive. Rachel lay awake, replaying Victor's phone call in her mind. $5 million had seemed like an astronomical sum 2 weeks ago. Now, understanding the true value of the land and the community it supported, she recognized it for what it was, an insultingly low offer designed to capitalize on her presumed desperation. The next day brought heavy rain, a summer storm that swelled the river and kept most residents indoors. Rachel met with Graham in the community center to discuss the boundary incursion. "We should file a trespassing complaint," Graham advised. "Will that deter them?" Rachel asked skeptically. "Probably not," Graham admitted. "But it creates legal leverage. More practically, I suggest we expedite the physical boundary marking project. The trust allows for security measures. They spent the morning drawing up plans for property line reinforcement. A combination of fencing, natural barriers, and clear signage. By afternoon, the rain had intensified, drumming on the metal roof of the community center where residents had gathered for an impromptu movie screening for the children and board games for the adults. Rachel was halfway through a game of chess with Miriam when her phone rang. "Jonah, you need to come to the dam control station," he said, his voice tight with urgency. The rain had turned the paths to mud, but Rachel ran anyway, arriving breathless and soaked at the control building. Inside, Jonah hunched over monitors displaying water level readings that pulsed an angry red. "The levels are rising too fast," he explained. "The automatic spillway should have opened, but it's not responding." "Could it be a mechanical failure?" Rachel asked. "Possibly, but unlikely. We did a full system check last week." Jonah pulled up another screen, showing a camera feed of the spillway itself. Through the sheeting rain, they could see the gates remained closed despite the rising water. "What happens if they don't open?" "Eventually, the dam overtops," Jonah said grimly. "At best, we lose power generation. At worst, structural damage, flooding downstream where most of the homes are located." "Can they open it manually?" "Yes, but someone has to physically go to the spillway control mechanism. In this weather, that's dangerous." "How long do we have? At this rate?" "Maybe 2 hours before Ricketal." "What do you need?" Jonah grabbed a waterproof tablet and a set of tools. "Someone to assist on site while I try to override the system remotely." "I'm going with you," she interrupted. "This is my responsibility too." They took the utility vehicle as far as they could, then continued on foot through the driving rain to the spillway structure, a concrete edifice jutting from the dam face with a metal access door. Inside, the mechanical room housed the manual override controls. Jonah examined the system. "The control arm is physically blocked. This was deliberate." Rachel helped him remove the obstruction, her hands numb with cold and fear. Outside, the rain continued to pound, and the roar of water through the dam's turbines had taken on a higher, more dangerous pitch. With the bar removed, Jonah attempted to activate the manual release, but the mechanism groaned and stuck. "Corrosion," he muttered. "Can it be fixed?" "Not quickly enough." Jonah thought for a moment. "There's another way. The emergency floodgates on the west side. They're purely mechanical, no electronics to hack, no complex mechanisms to sabotage." Back into the storm they went, slogging through mud that sucked at their boots, making their way to the western edge of the dam where a secondary spillway waited, a simple system of gates operated by a large wheel valve. It took both of them straining against the valve to start it turning. Inch by inch, the gates opened, and a powerful jet of water burst through, alleviating pressure on the main structure. They continued turning until the valve would move no further. "Will it be enough?" Rachel gasped. Jonah checked the tablet, which showed the reservoir levels beginning to stabilize. "It should hold until the storm passes. Then we can assess the damage and properly repair the main spillway." As they made their way back to the control station, a new alarm sounded from Jonah's tablet. He stopped, staring at the screen in horror. "The west embankment is showing signs of erosion," he reported. "That release created more pressure than the bank can handle." They changed course, heading for the western edge of the reservoir where the natural earthen embankment formed part of the containment system. Through sheets of rain, they could see water cutting through the soil, carving a channel that grew larger by the minute. "If that breaks, everything downstream is in danger," Jonah shouted. "We need to alert the community. Now." Rachel grabbed the emergency radio from the utility vehicle. "Attention all residents," she broadcast. "This is an emergency evacuation notice. The west embankment is failing. Move to higher ground immediately. Repeat, move to higher ground across the valley. The emergency siren began to wail, its mournful cry rising above the storm. Rachel and Jonah raced back toward the community, stopping to help residents struggling up the muddy paths toward the designated shelter area on the eastern ridge. Miriam had taken charge at the community center, organizing evacuation teams and checking names against the resident list. 3 families unaccounted for, she reported. The Navarros, the Wilsons, and Maya's family, the Chens. The Navarros and Wilsons were working on the Fair Orchard project today. Someone volunteered. They might not have heard the siren. I'll find them, Rachel decided. Not alone, Jonah insisted. They drove as far as they could. Then Zuri deployed the drone, its lights barely visible through the downpour. The tablet displayed thermal imaging, scanning for human heat signatures. There, Zuri pointed. That's got to be the Navarros and Wilsons. The families had taken refuge in a tool shed, unaware of the danger until Rachel and Zuri arrived to escort them to safety. By the time they returned to the community center, the water had begun to overflow the western embankment, rushing downhill toward the lowest-lying homes. The Chens, Rachel asked Miriam. Still missing. Their home is in the lowest section. Without hesitation, Rachel grabbed a life vest and a length of rope from the emergency supplies. I know where they are. They have that basement workshop where cell reception is poor. I'm coming with you, Zuri said. They took the remaining utility vehicle, navigating increasingly flooded paths. Twice they had to abandon the vehicle and proceed on foot, wading through knee-deep water that grew swifter by the minute. The Chen's micro-home was already surrounded by water when they arrived. Rachel pounded on the door, shouting over the roar of the flood. No response. The workshop entrance is around back, she recalled. There's an exterior door that leads directly to the basement. They found it partially submerged but still accessible. Rachel wrenched it open, and they descended into the darkened workshop. There, they found Maya and her parents frantically trying to save equipment, unaware of how serious the situation had become. We need to leave now, Rachel urged, helping them gather only essential items. The embankment is failing. It's not safe. They had just reached the main floor when a massive surge of water struck the house, shattering a window and pouring in. The current nearly knocked them off their feet as they struggled toward the front door. Outside was worse. The gentle slope that had held only inches of water minutes before was now a churning knee-deep torrent, powerful enough to sweep them away. Link arms, Rachel ordered. Zuri at the front with the flashlight, then Maya, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Chen, and I'll take the rear. They began their slow progress uphill, fighting against the current with each step. Halfway to higher ground, Maya slipped, the water nearly pulling her under before her mother caught her. The girl was terrified now, crying as the cold water rose to her chest. I can't carry all my gear in her, Mrs. Chen called back. Without hesitation, Rachel moved forward in the chain, hoisted Maya onto her back, and secured her with the rope. Hold tight, she told the girl. It took nearly 40 minutes to cover what should have been a 10-minute walk, but they finally reached the ridge where the rest of the community waited anxiously. Cheers erupted as they appeared through the rain, muddy and exhausted but alive. Maya clung to Rachel even after they reached safety, her small arms locked around Rachel's neck. You saved us, she whispered. Dawn broke clear and cool, the storm finally spent. Rachel stood with Jonah and the emergency assessment team, surveying the damage from the ridge overlook. Below, the western embankment had indeed failed, sending a wall of water through the lower section of the community. A dozen micro-homes had been damaged, some severely, gardens were washed out, and a section of the orchard was underwater. Could have been much worse, Jonah observed. If we hadn't opened the emergency gates when we did, the main dam might have failed. That would have been catastrophic. This was deliberate, Rachel said. The blocked spillway, the corroded mechanism. Someone wanted this to happen. I've got proof, Zuri said. When I realized the drone was operational despite the storm, I sent it to monitor the boundary. Look what it captured. She showed them night vision footage of 2 vehicles with Teradyne logos leaving Hawthorne Haven property via a maintenance road that ran along the western boundary, time-stamped just before the spillway failure was discovered. And I've got more, she continued. These are from 2 days ago, Teradyne contractors examining the spillway mechanism. And here, she zoomed in on a man holding what appeared to be a spray bottle, applying something to the control arms. Rachel's phone rang. "Graham, I just heard," he said when she answered. "How bad is it?" "Significant damage, but no casualties. Thank God." "Zuri has evidence that Teradyne sabotaged the spillway. We need to move legally on this. Fast." "I'll file emergency injunctions today," Graham promised. "In the meantime, document everything. Every bit of damage, every repair cost. And Rachel, be careful. If they're willing to risk lives." "I know," she said grimly. The community gathered in the afternoon to coordinate recovery efforts. Teams were assigned to assess structural damage, salvage possessions, and begin clearing debris. Despite the destruction, spirits remained remarkably high, a testament to the resilience Elias had fostered in this place. As Rachel worked alongside residents, clearing mud from one of the damaged homes, her phone rang again. "Drew? Rachel, what's going on?" "Soren just showed me a news alert about flooding at some eco-village in Hawthorne County." "Is that where you are? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. There was some damage, but everyone's safe." "The kids are worried sick. What happened?" "The dam's spillway was sabotaged. We have evidence that Teradyne Minerals was responsible." "Victor's company? Why would they?" "Because he wants this land, Drew. He offered me $5 million for it 2 weeks ago. When I refused, he apparently decided on more aggressive tactics." "The kids want to see you, to make sure you're okay." "The road is partially washed out," Rachel said. "It'll be at least 2 days before it's passable again. What if we come as far as we can? Maybe meet halfway?" "That could work. The main road is clear up to the county line. There's a ranger station there. Tomorrow at noon, I'll be there." After hanging up, Rachel wondered at the change in Drew's tone. Was he genuinely concerned, or was this another angle in whatever game he and Victor were playing? That evening, as residents gathered in the community center for a hot meal and progress reports, Soren called on the satellite phone. "Mom, are you really okay? We saw videos of the flooding online." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired and muddy. Dad says your cousin tried to hurt people. Is that true?" "We have evidence that Teradyne employees tampered with the dam. We don't know if Victor ordered it directly." "That's messed up," Soren said. "Dad says we're coming to see you tomorrow." "I can't wait," Rachel told him. "Mom," Soren's voice dropped to a near whisper. "I've been working on something. A drone modification for search and rescue. Would it help if I brought it?" "That would be amazing, Soren. We could definitely use it." After the call, Rachel joined Jonah at a table where he was reviewing repair estimates. "How bad?" she asked. "The homes can be fixed. We have the materials and skills. The embankment is the bigger challenge. We need heavy equipment and possibly engineering approval from the county." "Cost?" Jonah grimaced. "Conservatively, $100,000. The trust has it, but it's still a major expense." Rachel nodded, thinking of the $5 million Victor had offered, a sum that now seemed both inadequate for what this land was worth and blood money for what his company had done. "We'll rebuild better than before," she decided, "and we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what Teradyne did here." Zuri joined them, her camera still in hand. "I've been in touch with my editor. They want the story. Corporate sabotage endangering an eco-community. With the evidence we have, it could make national news." "Do it," Rachel authorized. "But wait until after we file the legal injunctions. I want everything in the book." The ranger station parking lot was nearly empty when Rachel arrived the following day. She'd borrowed Miriam's truck, one of the few vehicles undamaged by the flooding. After a sleepless night and a morning of coordinating repair teams, she was exhausted but buoyed by the prospect of seeing her children. Drew's silver SUV pulled in minutes later. Before he had fully stopped, Elowen was tumbling out the door and racing toward Rachel, her face a mixture of worry and relief. "Mom," she cried, "we saw the flood on Dad's computer. Were you scared? Did your house get washed away?" Rachel held her daughter tightly. "The trustee cabin is on higher ground, so it's fine. And yes, I was scared, but everyone worked together to stay safe." Soren approached more slowly, a large backpack slung over his shoulder. "The news said the dam was damaged on purpose. Is that true?" "We have evidence suggesting that, yes," Rachel confirmed. Drew stood back, watching the reunion with an unreadable expression. The news reports mentioned Teradyne specifically. Victor called me this morning, absolutely livid about the accusations. "We have video footage and photographs," Rachel said flatly. "Teradyne contractors on our property, tampering with the spillway mechanism. The evidence is being submitted to the EPA and local authorities today. Look, I know Victor can be aggressive in business, but endangering lives? That's criminal." "Yes, it is," Rachel agreed. Elowen tugged at her hand. "Can we still visit?" "Dad said the road is broken. But if your dad is willing, you could come with me now. The ranger station has a boat that can take us across the lake, and from there it's just a short hike to the community." "Please, Dad," Elowen pleaded. Drew hesitated. "I have meetings this afternoon." "I brought my drone," Soren said suddenly. "All right, when should I pick them up?" "The road should be passable by tomorrow afternoon," Rachel said. "So I can have them back here by 4. Rachel, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're safe, and I may have misjudged what your grandfather left you." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the closest Drew had come to acknowledging a mistake in years. Rachel simply nodded, unwilling to spoil the moment. The boat trip across the lake was brief, but beautiful, the water reflecting the clear blue sky. Elowen trailed her fingers in the cool water, asking dozens of questions about the flood and the community's response. Soren sat quietly, taking in the scenery with new eyes, his drone equipment clutched protectively in his lap. "I'm thinking of bringing my STEM club here sometime," he said. "If that's okay. The renewable energy systems are way more advanced than anything we've studied." "I think that would be wonderful," Rachel replied. The community was a hive of activity when they arrived. Teams cleared debris, assessed structural damage, and began repairs on the less affected homes. The children were immediately drawn into the effort, Elowen joining Maya and other children collecting scattered belongings, while Soren worked with Jonah to set up his drone for aerial surveying. Rachel found herself leading a team reinforcing the temporary dam along the breached embankment. The work was physically demanding, but there was something deeply satisfying about the communal effort, dozens of people working in harmony toward a common goal, without hierarchy or hesitation. By mid-afternoon, Soren's drone had mapped the entire damaged area, providing crucial data for the engineering team. "This is incredible," Jonah told him, examining the data on a tablet. "With this mapping, we can prioritize the most vulnerable areas for immediate reinforcement." "I could program it to run regular monitoring sweeps," Soren offered eagerly. "Set up a baseline and then identify any changes automatically." "That would be extremely helpful," Jonah agreed. Rachel watched from a distance, her heart full. This was her son, brilliant, capable, and now engaged in something meaningful. His usual adolescent reserve had melted away in the face of genuine purpose and respect from the adults around him. Elowen, meanwhile, had appointed herself assistant to Miriam, helping distribute water and snacks to the workers. As dusk approached, the community gathered for a shared meal in the partially repaired community center. The children sat together at a table, Soren and Elowen now fully integrated into the group, sharing stories and plans for the next day's efforts. "They seem happy," Miriam observed. "Your son has quite a mind on him." "He does," Rachel agreed. "This is the most engaged I've seen him in months. At home, at Drew's house, he mostly locks himself in his room with his computer. Purpose is a powerful thing, especially for young people. They need to feel useful, to know their contributions matter. After dinner, Jonah approached with news. The turbine room inspection is complete. There's something you should see. Rachel followed him to the dam structure, where engineers had been assessing damage to the power generation system. We found something unexpected during the inspection, Jonah explained, leading her to a section of floor near the main control panel. Water pressure shifted some equipment, revealing this. He pointed to what appeared to be a metal plate set into the concrete floor, nearly invisible until recently. A circular indentation was clearly visible in its center, the exact size of Rachel's dollar coin. Another lock, Rachel murmured. Seems your grandfather had more secrets, Jonah agreed. Rachel carefully placed the coin in the indentation. A soft click, and the plate shifted, revealing a recessed handle. Together, they lifted the heavy cover, exposing a small chamber beneath the floor. Inside sat a strong box of brushed steel, weatherproof and secured with another coin-shaped lock. They brought the box to the surface, where Rachel once again used the dollar to open it. Inside, they found 3 sealed document packets, each labeled in Elias's handwriting. Mineral rights and deed, 1931, financial legacy. Corporate malfeasance, Teradyne. With trembling fingers, Rachel opened the first packet. It contained a yellowed deed dated 1931, granting all mineral and subsurface rights to Elias's grandfather, rights that had passed through the family to Elias himself, and now to Rachel as trustee. This predates modern mining claims, Jonah realized. It supersedes any prospecting permits Teradyne might have obtained. They have no legal right to the lithium deposits, regardless of surface access. The second packet contained a USB drive and a handwritten letter. Rachel read it aloud. My dear Rachel, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I hope will be the financial foundation for Hawthorne Haven's future. The enclosed drive contains access credentials to a cryptocurrency wallet established in 2013. At that time, I invested a modest sum in what was then an experimental technology. That investment has grown substantially. As of my last accounting, the wallet contains the equivalent of $42 million, royalties from my green patents and shrewd investments, converted to ensure they remain beyond corporate reach. Use these funds wisely to protect and expand our vision. With love and faith in you, Grandfather Elias. Rachel stared at the letter in disbelief. $42 million? Your grandfather was always ahead of his time, Jonah said. The third packet proved the most damning, detailed documentation of Teradyne's environmental violations spanning 2 decades, soil samples, water testing results, internal memos obtained through whistleblowers, and photographic evidence of illegal toxic waste dumping on properties adjacent to the Hawthorne family holdings. This is why Victor wants this land so badly, Rachel realized. Not just for the lithium, but to cover up what they've done. If mining operations began here, they could claim any contamination was pre-existing or an unfortunate side effect of necessary resource extraction. With this evidence, the EPA could shut them down entirely, Jonah said. Fines alone would run into the millions, not to mention potential criminal charges. We need to secure these documents immediately and get the financial information to Graham. With these resources, we can rebuild Hawthorne Haven better than before and fight Teradyne on equal footing. Later that evening, after the children had fallen asleep in the trustee cabin, Rachel sat on the porch with Graham, who had arrived with EPA officials to document the sabotage evidence. The cryptocurrency verification will take a few days, Graham explained. What does this mean for the custody situation? Rachel asked. It changes everything, Graham assured her. Financial stability was the court's primary concern. With the trustee's stipend already established and now this additional security, plus stable housing and a supportive community, you have an extremely strong case for primary custody. Rachel glanced through the window at her sleeping children. Soren had insisted on staying to help with additional drone surveys, while Elowen had been adopted as an honorary member of Maya's family. They fit here, in a way they never had in her small apartment. Victor won't give up easily, she warned. The mineral rights alone are worth fighting for, never mind what the environmental violations could cost Teradyne. No, he won't, Graham agreed. But neither will we. The next week passed in a blur of activity. The emergency road repairs were completed, allowing heavy equipment to reach the community. With funds from the cryptocurrency wallet now verified and accessible, Rachel authorized immediate repairs to all damaged structures. Word of Teradyne's sabotage had spread through local media, and volunteers from neighboring communities arrived daily to help with rebuilding efforts. The breached embankment was reinforced with proper engineering oversight, and the dam's spillway was not only fixed but upgraded with additional security measures. Zuri's photographs and drone footage had been published in a major environmental magazine, bringing national attention to both the attack and the innovative community that had weathered it. Rachel's custody petition moved forward rapidly, with a hearing scheduled just 3 weeks after the flooding. Drew, surprisingly, had become less combative in their communications, allowing the children to spend additional days at Hawthorne Haven to help with the recovery effort. Whether this represented a genuine change of heart or strategic positioning ahead of the custody hearing remained to be seen. Soren and Elowen thrived in the community environment. Soren's drone program had been officially integrated into Hawthorne Haven's monitoring systems, and he spent hours working with Jonah and the engineering team. Elowen had appointed herself assistant gardener, helping Hector plant new seedlings to replace those lost in the flood, giving each plant a name and a whispered encouragement. On a warm Saturday morning, as Rachel supervised the planting of new orchard rows, Victor arrived unannounced. His black Tesla crawled along the newly repaired main road, looking alien among the practical trucks and utility vehicles. Rachel watched warily as he emerged, dressed in a business-casual outfit that still managed to look out of place among the work clothes of the community. "Quite the operation you've got going," he remarked, approaching Rachel. "What do you want, Victor?" Rachel asked. "Your company is facing multiple investigations and lawsuits because of the sabotage. You're not welcome here. That's precisely why I've come to discuss a settlement, one that would benefit all parties." "I'm listening." Teradyne is prepared to offer $20 million for Hawthorne Haven, plus an additional $5 million in direct compensation to residents affected by the unfortunate flooding incident. "Unfortunate incident," Rachel repeated incredulous. "Your contractors deliberately sabotaged the dam, endangering dozens of lives. That's not an incident, it's a crime. Allegations that would be difficult and expensive to prove in court. Meanwhile, my offer would provide immediate compensation and allow residents to relocate to more conventional housing." "The offer is rejected," Rachel said. "This land isn't for sale at any price. And we have more than allegations, we have video evidence, sworn testimony, and documentation of years of environmental violations by Teradyne." "What documentation?" "Grandfather Elias kept meticulous records," Rachel informed him. "Soil samples, water testing, internal memos from Teradyne whistleblowers. Enough to interest not just the EPA but the Department of Justice." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "The EPA agents were quite interested in the materials we provided. I believe they're executing search warrants at Teradyne offices as we speak." "This is a mistake, Rachel. You don't want me as an enemy." "You became my enemy when you tried to destroy my community," Rachel replied. "Now, I suggest you leave before I call the sheriff about another trespassing violation." Victor turned without another word, stalking back to his Tesla. As he drove away, Miriam joined Rachel, passing her a bottle of water. That went about as expected. "He'll escalate," Rachel predicted. "The evidence we have could destroy Teradyne completely." "Then we'd better be prepared," Miriam agreed. Rachel's prediction proved accurate, sooner than expected. 3 days later, a county board meeting was hastily convened to review the mineral rights documentation Rachel had submitted. Victor appeared with Teradyne's corporate counsel, challenging the validity of the 1931 deed. The document in question has not been properly maintained in county records, Teradyne's lawyer argued. It appears to have been filed originally, but subsequent required renewals were never recorded. The board, composed primarily of local business owners and longtime residents, appeared sympathetic to Teradyne's position. Suspiciously so, Rachel thought, noting how several members avoided eye contact during the proceedings. Graham fought valiantly, presenting historical records and legal precedents, but the board voted 4-3 to invalidate the mineral rights deed pending further legal review, effectively freezing Rachel's claim while allowing Teradyne's existing permits to remain active. "You bought them off?" Rachel fumed. "Did you see how Thompson and Kingsley wouldn't even look at us? Their campaigns have probably been funded by Teradyne for years." "It's a setback," Graham acknowledged. "We'll appeal to the state court immediately." Meanwhile, the environmental violations evidence is entirely separate from the mineral rights issue. The EPA investigation continues regardless. The next morning brought more trouble. Residents arriving with supply trucks reported that the main access road had been blockaded at the county line by private security contractors claiming to be enforcing the board's decision. "They've stationed armed guards," Jonah reported after investigating. "They're allowing residents to leave but requiring inspection of all incoming vehicles for unauthorized mining equipment." "It's a siege tactic," Miriam realized. "Controlling access to wear us down." Rachel called Graham immediately. "We need an emergency injunction. They can't blockade a private road based on a mineral rights dispute." "Already on it," Graham assured her. "I've got a judge reviewing the filing now. In the meantime, how are supplies?" "We're good for at least 2 weeks," Rachel calculated. The blockade remained in place, despite Graham's legal efforts. The local judge, another longtime recipient of Teradyne's community generosity, delayed ruling on the emergency injunction, citing the complexity of the case. 5 days into the blockade, Rachel was in the dam control room with Jonah, reviewing security measures, when Soren burst in, breathless with excitement. "Mom, the coin, I figured it out." "What coin, sweetie?" Rachel asked. "Grandfather's dollar," Soren explained impatiently. "It's not just a key, it's a map." He pulled out a magnifying glass, and the coin. "Look at the edge where his initials are engraved. I was examining it for my STEM project on security systems, and I noticed there's more than just. There's a sequence of tiny marks, coordinates." Rachel took the magnifying glass, squinting at the coin's edge. Sure enough, nearly invisible to the naked eye, a series of numbers and letters were inscribed alongside Elias's initials. "Jonah, do these look like coordinates to you?" she asked. He studied the markings, then nodded slowly. "They could be. Let me check." He entered the sequence into the control room computer, pulling up a topographical map of Hawthorne Haven. "These point to a location beneath the main community center, about 20 feet below ground level. The community center has a basement, but it's not that deep." "No, but it was built on the foundation of an older structure," Jonah said, checking historical records on the computer. "According to this, the original Hawthorne farmhouse stood there until the 1950s. It had a deep root cellar and what's described as a secure storage room built during World War II. At the bottom, they found a heavy door with the now familiar coin-shaped lock. Within the hour, a team had located an access point beneath the community center's storage room, a section of flooring that didn't match the rest, concealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Rachel inserted the dollar with trembling fingers. The lock mechanism turned smoothly, and the door swung open to reveal a small, dry chamber lined with steel. At its center stood a single object, a sealed titanium tube mounted on a pedestal. Once again, the coin served as the key, fitting perfectly into a slot in the tube's cap. Graham arrived that evening to examine the findings, his expression growing increasingly amazed as he reviewed the treasury bonds. Inside, they found 2 items, a leather portfolio containing treasury bonds dated 1944 with a face value of $20 million, and a waterproof case containing multiple USB drives, and hard copies of what appeared to be Teradyne's internal communications spanning 30 years. These are legitimate, he confirmed, and given their age and rarity, their current value would be approximately $160 million. $160 million, Rachel echoed, stunned. How did my grandfather acquire these? According to this letter, Graham said, holding up a sealed envelope that had been tucked among the bonds, they were purchased by your great-grandfather during the war as a hedge against economic uncertainty. Elias inherited them and chose to preserve them in their original form, rather than redeeming them. The USB drives proved even more valuable in the immediate term. They contained decades of evidence documenting Teradyne's environmental violations, internal memos discussing illegal waste disposal, and even recordings of conversations between Victor and other executives plotting to acquire Hawthorne Haven by any means necessary. Graham searched for words, this is beyond comprehensive. Elias wasn't just documenting their violations. He was building a case methodically over decades. There are even sealed affidavits from former Teradyne employees. He knew, Rachel realized, he knew Victor or someone like him would come after this land eventually. He was preparing all along, not just preparing, Graham corrected, but anticipating exactly if they would try to take it. Look at this, he held up a document dated just months before Elias's death. It's a detailed prediction of how Teradyne would attempt to invalidate the mineral rights deed, including which board members were most susceptible to bribes. That night, Rachel sat with her children on the porch of the trustee cabin watching fireflies rise from the meadow below. The discovery of the bonds and evidence had energized the community, providing not just financial security but vindication of Elias's foresight and commitment to protecting the land. Do you think grandfather knew we'd figure it out? Soren asked. I think he counted on it, Rachel replied. He believed in us, in our family's ability to solve problems and protect what matters. Are we going to be rich now? Aloan asked. Rachel smiled. The community will be secure, and yes, we'll have everything we need. But more importantly, we'll be together. Here? Soren asked. If that's what you want, she said. The custody hearing is next week. With everything that's happened, the trustee position, the financial security, I believe the judge will rule in our favor. I want to stay, Elowen said. Maya says I can have the bedroom next to hers if we move to a bigger house. Soren was more thoughtful. I'd miss some of my friends from school, but I could still see them, and the STEM opportunities here are kind of amazing. Jonah said I could apprentice with the engineering team next summer. Whatever the judge decides, know that I will always fight for you, both of you, no matter what. As her children drifted to sleep later that night, Rachel stood at the window, gazing out at the community that had become her home in just a few short weeks. Tomorrow they would begin using the evidence Elias had collected, fighting back against Victor and Teradyne with every legal tool at their disposal. The morning of the custody hearing dawned bright and clear. Rachel stood before the mirror in the trustee cabin, adjusting the lapel of her new suit, conservative but elegant, projecting exactly the image of stability and competence she needed the court to see. Behind her, Soren and Elowen sat on the sofa, unusually subdued. Despite Rachel's assurances, they understood the gravity of the day's proceedings. Their lives would be shaped by a stranger's decision, regardless of their own blossoming attachment to Hawthorne Haven. You both look so grown up, Rachel said. Elowen, in a blue dress that matched her eyes, fidgeted with the ribbon in her hair. What if the judge says no? What if we have to stay with Dad most of the time? Rachel knelt before her daughter. Then we'll make the most of every moment we have together. But I believe the judge will see that this is where you belong, with me, in a community that loves you both. Soren, uncomfortable in a dress shirt and tie, cleared his throat. Dad's been different lately. Less, I don't know, controlling? He even said last week that your inheritance was impressive. That's like the first positive thing he's said about you in forever. Your father is a complicated man, Rachel said carefully. "But I believe he wants what's best for you, even if we disagree about what that is." A knock at the door announced Graham's arrival, in his impeccable suit, with a briefcase full of documentation supporting Rachel's petition. He projected confidence that helped settle her nerves. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," Rachel replied. The drive to the courthouse was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. 2 months ago, Rachel had stood in that same building, defeated and hopeless as a judge granted Drew primary custody. Today, she returned transformed, not just financially secure, but emotionally stronger, the leader of a community that had weathered the crisis and emerged more unified than before. Drew waited on the courthouse steps with his attorney, his expression unreadable. "Good luck," he said to Rachel. "Whatever happens, the kids have been happier these past few weeks than I've seen them in a long time." Unlike the previous hearing, he wore a more casual blazer rather than a power suit, and he greeted the children with genuine warmth, but without the subtle possessiveness Rachel had grown to recognize. Inside, the same Judge Klein presided, her sharp eyes taking in Rachel's transformed appearance. "I understand we're here to review custody arrangements based on changed circumstances," she began. Graham presented their case methodically. The trustee position and stipend, the secure housing at Hawthorne Haven, the educational opportunities for both children, and the community support structure that surrounded them. He submitted financial documentation, character references from community members, and evidence of the children's improved emotional well-being. "Most compellingly, Your Honor," Graham concluded, "the children themselves have expressed a strong preference for residing primarily with their mother at Hawthorne Haven, where they have formed meaningful connections and engaged in enriching activities tailored to their individual interests." Drew's attorney presented a more muted case than before, acknowledging the changed circumstances while arguing for a more balanced time-sharing arrangement rather than a complete reversal of the previous order. When it was Drew's turn to speak, he surprised everyone. "Your Honor, while I cherish my time with my children and believe I provide them with a stable home, I have observed their enthusiasm for the community their mother has joined. Soren's engagement with the engineering programs there has ignited an academic passion I've been trying to foster for years, and Elowen," he smiled slightly, "has become a budding environmentalist with strong opinions about sustainable farming practices." A ripple of gentle laughter moved through the courtroom. Judge Klein's expression softened slightly. "What are you suggesting, Mr. Bennett?" "I'm suggesting that the children's best interests might be served by primary residence with their mother during the school year, with significant time at my home during breaks and some weekends. I would request that their education remains at their current schools, which are approximately 40 minutes from Hawthorne Haven." Rachel stared at her ex-husband, stunned by this unexpected concession. Judge Klein appeared equally surprised but nodded thoughtfully. "Miss Bennett, your response?" Rachel gathered her composure. "I would be amenable to that arrangement, Your Honor. The children's educational continuity is important, and I'm prepared to handle the commute to ensure they remain at their current schools." After brief deliberation, Judge Klein returned with her decision. "Based on the evidence presented and the admirable cooperation between the parents, I am modifying the custody order as follows. Ms. Bennett shall have primary physical custody during the school year. Mr. Bennett shall have the children every other weekend and 1 evening per week for dinner, plus 3 weeks during summer break and alternating major holidays. Ms. Bennett, the court is impressed by the positive changes in your circumstances and your commitment to providing stability for your children. The community you've described appears to offer unique benefits for Soren and Elowen's development. Mr. Bennett, your willingness to put your children's emotional needs first is commendable. This court encourages continued cooperation between both parents." Outside the courtroom, the children bounced with excitement, the tension of the morning forgotten in the joy of the ruling. As they chatted with Graham about when they could move their belongings to Hawthorne Haven, Drew approached Rachel. "Thank you," she said. Drew shrugged, hands in his pockets. "I've been doing some thinking these past few weeks, watching the kids light up when they talk about that place. It reminded me what matters. What changed? Rachel asked. Victor approached me. After the will reading, suggested I might receive a consultant's fee if I helped convince you to sell. He looked away, embarrassed. I considered it, briefly. But then I saw the news about the sabotage, the flooding. People could have died, including me, including you, Drew acknowledged. Whatever our differences, you're still their mother. And, he hesitated, you're doing something extraordinary with that place. Something I didn't think you had in you. The kids can still have their rooms at your house, she offered. For weekends and holidays, we'll make this work. As they parted ways, Rachel, with the children and Graham, Drew called after her. Rachel, for what it's worth, I think your grandfather knew exactly what he was doing when he left you that $1. 2 weeks after the custody hearing, Hawthorne Haven hummed with activity as final preparations were made for the rebirth ceremony. The rebuilt dam now powered expanded capacity for the community, and the hillside once devastated by flooding had been transformed with a row of flood-resistant straw bale homes, christened Elias Row. The blockade had been lifted following federal intervention. Victor and 3 other Teradyne executives faced multiple criminal charges for environmental violations, fraud, and criminal conspiracy related to the dam's sabotage. The company's stock had plummeted, and its operations were under strict regulatory oversight. In the community center, now expanded to include a dedicated learning space and media room, Rachel reviewed final details with Miriam and Jonah. The ceremony would celebrate not just recovery from the flood, but the establishment of the Haven Trust, a new entity created from the Treasury bond funds to support a network of sustainable communities modeled after Hawthorne Haven. The first satellite community breaks ground next month, Jonah reported. A former industrial site in Appalachia, reclaimed and repurposed. It will primarily serve families of coal miners affected by mine closures. And the educational trust? Miriam smiled. Fully funded. Scholarships for 50 students annually, plus apprenticeship programs in sustainable technologies. Soren is quite interested in being among the first mentor apprentices next summer. Soren and Elowen had settled into their new life with remarkable ease. They attended their former schools, with Rachel handling the daily commute, but Hawthorne Haven was undeniably home now. Soren had converted part of the trustee cabin's office into a drone workshop, while Elowen had planted a special garden where she grew flowers specifically to attract butterflies and hummingbirds. Mom, Elowen's voice rang out as she burst into the community center. Everyone's arriving, and Jonah's team got the fountain working again. The ceremonial area had been set up in the central green with the restored fountain as its focal point. Chairs arranged in concentric circles accommodated not just community residents, but representatives from neighboring towns, environmental organizations, and even several state officials interested in the innovative approach to sustainable living. As people took their seats, Rachel felt a momentary flash of nerves. Public speaking had never been her forte, and today's address would be live-streamed as part of a documentary Zuri was producing about Hawthorne Haven's journey. Soren appeared at her side. "You'll do great, Mom," he said. "Just tell the story like you tell it to us." The ceremony began with a brief history of Hawthorne Haven, presented by Miriam, followed by a moment of silence for those communities still recovering from environmental damage caused by corporate negligence. Then it was Rachel's turn. She approached the podium, the familiar weight of the dollar coin in her pocket grounding her. The faces before her, residents who had become family, children who had found purpose, visitors discovering new possibilities, gave her courage. 2 months ago, I stood in a lawyer's office and laughed when I was handed a single dollar as my inheritance, she began. I thought it was a final dismissal from a grandfather who had always seemed distant. I couldn't have been more wrong. What my grandfather understood, what we all came to realize, is that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in resilience, in community, in our commitment to each other and to the land that sustains us. Hawthorne Haven was never meant to be an escape from the world. but a model for what the world could become, one community at a time. As she spoke, Rachel noticed movement at the back of the gathering. Drew had arrived, standing quietly at the perimeter. Their eyes met briefly, and he nodded in acknowledgement, not quite approval, but respect. "Today, we announced the establishment of the Haven Trust," Rachel continued, "dedicated to creating a network of communities like ours, focusing particularly on single-parent families and veterans seeking a fresh start. The trust will also fund educational initiatives and apprenticeship programs, ensuring that the knowledge and skills developed here spread far beyond our boundaries." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. Rachel stepped back, making way for Jonah to explain the technical aspects of the expansion plans. As he spoke, Soren and Elowen joined Rachel at the side of the stage. "Can we say something too?" Soren asked quietly. Surprised and touched, Rachel nodded. After Jonah concluded, she returned to the microphone. "My children would like to share a few words," she announced. Soren and Elowen approached the podium together, the united front that brought unexpected tears to Rachel's eyes. For so long she had feared losing them, first to the divorce, then to the custody ruling. Now they stood beside her, confident and whole. "2 months ago, our mom inherited $1, Soren began. "Our dad told us it was kind of a joke, that our great-grandfather didn't think much of her." "But that was wrong," Elowen chimed in. "The $1 was magic. It unlocked doors and secrets, and a whole community of nice people. What we didn't understand at first," Soren continued, "was that the real inheritance wasn't the money that came later. It was this place, these people, and the chance to be part of something that matters. Our mom is brave," Elowen declared proudly. "During the flood, she carried Maya on her back through really deep water, and she fights for what's right, even when people try to stop her. So we want to thank her," Soren concluded, "for showing us what it means to build something instead of just buying things, and for never giving up on bringing our family back together." Rachel blinked back tears as her children embraced her, the audience erupting in applause. Over Elowen's head, she caught sight of Drew again. He was applauding too, his expression complex, perhaps recognizing, as she had, that their children had found something here that neither of their separate households had fully provided: purpose, belonging, and pride. As the formal ceremony concluded, residents and guests moved to tables laden with food harvested from the community's restored gardens. The atmosphere was celebratory, but purposeful. This was not just a victory party, but the launch of a greater mission. Graham found Rachel amid the festivities. "The First Haven Trust grants go out next week," he reported. 5 communities have already applied for partnership status. "And the Environmental Restoration Fund?" Rachel asked. "Fully established. The first project targets the watershed Pteridine contaminated. Cleanup begins next month." Rachel smiled, satisfied. Justice had many forms: legal, environmental, personal. Victory over Pteridine was sweet, but the true triumph was transforming that victory into something constructive rather than merely punitive. Rachel watched as Elowen taught other children a dance she had invented, while Soren surprised everyone by joining a group of teenagers manning the sound equipment, his usual reserve melting away among peers who valued his technical skills. "They're remarkable children," Miriam observed. "They've found themselves here," Rachel replied. From her pocket, she withdrew a small frame she had commissioned from one of the community's craftspeople, a simple wooden square with a circular inset perfectly sized for the coin. As evening fell, lanterns illuminated the central green where residents had gathered for music and dancing. She held the $1 coin in her palm, turning it to catch the moonlight on her grandfather's initials. Later, after the children had fallen asleep in their new bedrooms in the trustee cabin, now expanded to comfortably accommodate their family, Rachel stood on the porch alone, gazing at the lights of the community below. Tomorrow it would be mounted above the entrance to the community center, but tonight she wanted one last moment with it in her hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when no one else did, for seeing what I could become." She slipped the coin into its frame, securing it for display. From a single dollar, an entire world had grown, a community saved, a family reunited, a future secured, not just for her children but for generations to come. Inside the cabin, Soren called out sleepily, "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," Rachel answered.